Welcome. You're watching Building Legacy, a special series that takes you behind the scenes of some of India's most influential family-run businesses. Now, in the episode today, we explore the high-stakes journey of preparing the future torchbearers. The survival and success of any family business hinges on, which is the next generation. But grooming the next generation for leadership is no easy feat. How do legacy companies strike the right balance between tradition and transformation? What structures, mentorship, and education pathways are put in place to shape tomorrow's leaders? And today, our special guest on the show is also giving us the other side of the story. So we have, of course, as always, Mr. Janmejaya Sinha of the BCG Group with us, but we're also joined by Mr. Anant Goenka for a candid conversation today. Anant, thank you so much for your time. Mr. Sinha, great to speak with you as always. You know, before we come to you, Anant, with the barrage of questions that we have prepared for you, let me just get Mr. Sinha to set the context of why this is so important.
You know, there is this saying that family businesses find it hard to go beyond the third generation. This is a huge fraudulent saying, because if they survive 3 generations, they have survived 90 years. So that's a long time. But the fact remains that the next generation in a family business is the most important generation for the future of that business. So what Anant does will keep the RPG group going for the next 30 years. And then after that, his next generation will do the same. So it's really interesting to explore what do the next generation feel about their responsibilities, how do they prepare, how do they actually take this legacy of their grandfather, their father, and take it further and perpetuate it. Mr.
Goenka, thank you so much for your time. Of course, you come from a very storied, business family, and have been making strides in a leadership position in the group for so many years. How do you look at this subject that we're talking about, family businesses? Let's just get your core thought on that before we delve into deeper from your POV on the subject.
No, I think first of all, I'm filled with gratitude that I am where I am, being very lucky to be born into the family that I'm born in. And I think at the end, everything comes down, to me at least, to values. It comes down to the belief system that whether it is my grandfather has passed on to his kids and his kids to us in some way. So to me, I think it is the perpetuation of values, long-term thinking that comes in with being a part of a family. I think, to me, that is what makes all the difference when it comes to the life of a family business.
Is it an advantage? Of course, it is an advantage to be born into a storied family and have that opportunity. But sometimes, is there a bit of a disadvantage also? Because in a sense, the path is predetermined?
I think family businesses now are, I don't think there is a predetermined path. I think there is a clear option that family members do have, whether they want to continue in the business or they have passions and interests somewhere else. I'd say whether it is becoming a doctor or a psychologist or mastering cooking. I think everyone has, most families have that kind of freedom. I think, yes, there is some amount of overhang that you are aware as a young child that my family has this business. I've seen it happen over generations that they have taken over the business. So that part and path is obviously visible and available. But I think there is fair amount of freedom that is also given to next generations. And we've seen it across many families where people have chosen to adopt different careers.
What would you do if not this? Was there at any point in your mind a thought of something, as you mentioned, cooking or all of these other things? Was there ever even an iota of thought in your mind?
No, as a child, I enjoyed playing tennis. So I always thought that, okay, I'd love to be a tennis player and play at Wimbledon, but I didn't even reach state level. So I think I was quite clear that in reality, this would have been a good option. I enjoyed listening to stories in the family dining room and thought that this is a great option for me as well. So besides fleeting thoughts at very young age, I don't think I really thought of anything else.
Yeah. You talked about dining table conversations, and for children growing up, very often when people wonder कि doctor का बेटा doctor क्यों, actor का बेटा actor क्यों, it's also the culture and what you're hearing growing up. Does that become sort of second skin, like very natural to you growing up in a large business family?
To a certain extent, you do hear of large events in the family when they happen. Say if my grandfather would acquire a company, we would hear of that story once in a while, or if there was somebody who got an award for something, you would hear about that. So those stories sometimes you would hear. I would say generally my family didn't speak much about business at home. I'd say my dad would not speak that much. Yeah, you would see him reading through MISs once in a while and going through his files and papers, but I'm sure that happens in even a professional person's family home. So it was more, we spoke about normal family stuff, less about business and joint ventures. But of course, between my uncle, granddad, dad, there would be conversations that we were privy to as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating, you know. The question that I have always is I'd love to be inside Anand's head when he joined the RPG group. How does he know how he's doing? You know, everyone will know कि boss का बेटा है, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, you have to also prove yourself worthy to occupy the CEO's chair. You have to grow up, you have to show respect, the values, etc. It's a tough job. It's much harder for a next generation family member to enter the family business than for a normal successor to a CEO.
Did you feel that? Because you've had work experience extensively outside the group and then come in as well.
Right. Yeah, so I did a few internships. I spent some time in banking, which I realized I didn't enjoy. And then I spent some time in consulting, and I really enjoyed that actually. And I'm not saying that because you're here, but I felt that it was really something which I built a lot of skills in a very short time. I did some work in supply chain, and that I felt in a few months' time I was able to learn a lot. And then I joined Hindustan Lever, was my first job. And there I was spent time in rural India, maybe 2 or 3 months, going around villages, building self-help groups and making these women into distributors, getting bank loans from the state bank and so on and so forth. So I think that was a very enriching experience for me personally. Then in the factories, I worked at night shifts in some of the HUL factories. And that too, again, was a very deep experience, which I think I would have not possibly got in my own business to a certain extent. And then when I joined our business, CEAT, I started off as a territory leader sales, moved to a regional manager role over time, and then grew within the business till I became managing director about 10, 12 years hence. The way I was largely assessed would be very similar to anyone else. I think it was as professional as it could get in the setting that I was. I did have a balanced scorecard. I would have review meetings with my bosses, who at that time would have been the area sales manager, and so on, wherever applicable. But however, I knew during my stint in RPG, I was of course growing faster than others. I was growing a lot because of my surname. And the challenge came on confidence. I would always doubt that, okay, I know I'm growing because of these reasons. So confidence to me was the biggest challenge to overcome over time. And to me, I would say I really got that only maybe 12, 13 years after I joined the group. I'd say I joined CEAT in 2011 as managing director. And then maybe 4 or 5 years after that, we got some success. And I think till you don't get that success, you always question yourself at least I question myself a lot to that extent. So that's what made that change over time, that when I saw some success, some change, I felt more comfortable in my skin.
You know, it could be the other way as well, that if you have a family member who joins the organization, they could be assessed even more harshly, especially with those on top, in the sense you expect more, so that weight of expectations is also there.
So, but I'll tell you, it's interesting. There is, I would say 30-40% who go through some of the turmoil that Anant went through in family businesses. There are a set of others who grow up and feel it's their birthright, and that they are almost a little irritated that it's taking so long, and they have a basic innate feeling that they are meant to teach you, and their families have allowed that to happen, right? And I don't know what is right and wrong. I refuse to get into saying each thing works, each family business is bespoke. They have to do it for what they feel is right, But it's not necessarily the same experience. Is some families, use the thing that you come in as an MD. Some make you go through that process.
Like in this case.
Yeah. Some force you, in his case also, not necessarily force you, but they ask you, they expect you to work somewhere else and then come in. Others don't want you to work anywhere else. They want you to come in and sit in the chairman's office or the CEO's office and learn, from watching them.
But I think this is a wholesome example, because you needn't have done all of those things or taken all of those steps. This is something that was imposed on you by yourself. You believed in it, your family, took part in it, and the fact that you're saying that you still question yourself so many years on shows that your own standards were set high.
Yeah, no, I think this is just the experience that I went through. I think the early stages was a lot on skill building, was what I think that's where it helped. Second part was the confidence part of it. And I'd say also respect from peers, because one very important part for the family member is how do you work with your professional managers who are there, and how do you get that respect. And those were doubts that I always had in my mind, that okay, my head of marketing may have 25 years experience, I'm this 30-year-old kid who's come in. What if we have a difference of opinion? Who's right? And at that time there was always that dilemma, that who is right and how do I take that decision correctly. So whether it was, in some cases I had mentors who helped, but to me I'd say one difference or one point where there was a difference was when I went to do my formal education as an MBA. I had a professor by the name of Harry Kramer, and he told me a couple of things. He said, one is get everyone's points of view. In the end, do what you think is right. So do the right thing. Second thing is, he just said, use your common sense. In the end, a lot of people don't use common sense, but use common sense. And those were very simple messages that kind of struck with me on these dilemmas that I had. I also had a couple of fortunate opportunities where, even though I was territory leader sales, my CEO would call me once a week. He'd say, spend 1 hour with me a week and I will chat with you about my experiences as managing director. And those were great learning experiences. He would just share stories one after the other of what he does, how he manages people. And being part of the family, I was lucky to get that experience. I was also invited to a lot of the leadership meetings. So if dad was having a review on M&A or on anything, or an executive committee meeting, I would be a part of that, even though I was much more junior. So those exposures gave some insight into higher level thinking while you're actually building skills on the ground.
See, I want to bring out a very interesting conundrum on one thing that he highlighted, which is very important. How do I know that I'm right? How do I earn respect from professional managers? Then there's the other side. How do I get autonomy from my father? How do I take big decisions, on capital, on M&A, etc.? What can I change people? And how much is left unsaid? The father might be saying he should do what he wants. He may be saying, how do I have this discussion? How do you create that platform for open discussion with a parent? Most families don't have it. My sons don't feel that comfortable having some conversations with me. They would rather have it with my, with my brother or with some cousins of theirs rather than with me. These apply to them as well. And now there is a business which is running, and you have this, what are my real decision rights when the parent is still there, who is well-meaning, who wants you to succeed. And what are the spaces that are there? Can you make your own mistakes, or do they prevent you? How does one deal with all of this? This is complex,
And there'll be two different ways of looking at it.
Yeah.
We have your point of view, but there could be the other point of view as well. How much to let go and how much to control. Did you ever face any kind of friction in this, right, where you had that question mark, or you didn't maybe agree? But then, you had to either give in or make your point?
So for the first 10 years, I was growing in the organization. So my bosses were, whether it was the head of supply chain of a company or whether it was the managing director of the company, so non-family members. So it was very fairly professional. And if I disagreed with them, my boss's view was final. And I'd say when I became MD, then my dad was my boss. And again, there I played the role. We have 6 group companies. So within each company, there is a very clear schedule of authority for an MD in each company. Okay, this is the capital allocation decision where the MD has certain rights. Senior management, leadership, hiring decisions, MD has certain rights. And then some go up to the chairman and so on. So I'd say that we were fairly professional even then. So I had as much rights as MD of CEAT as maybe the MD of KEC and so on. So to that extent, that's how I was even wired. That's what I had seen my bosses, and so I moved to that kind of a role. And in the last 2-3 years, I've moved to a role of a vice chairman. Now that I've moved on from my CEAT managing directorship, there I had a chat with Dad in terms of how do we divide our responsibilities, and more importantly for the next levels, because suddenly you have one more layer which never existed. So how do you manage that? So there we had a very clear decision and discussion that, okay, this is how we will divide our schedule of authority. I will look at, say, for example, recruiting VP plus talent. He will look at senior vice president or whatever, and so on and so forth. So that's how we've kind of divided our work. I think it gives the next level a lot more clarity as well in terms of the rules.
So you've cut out in advance any scope for conflict by demarcating those lines, and no one crosses either way.
Fairly, I'd say it's fairly clearly divided, and the good thing is that we are not very complex. First of all, complex means there's 2 of us in the family, and we have multiple companies. Usually that complexity comes in when you have one company and you have 5 or 6 family members. That's when real stress comes in. So I think I'm fortunate that we have so many companies and just 2 family members in that sense, which makes it that much easier to kind of have your own space.
That's a good point. There is the structure in this particular case leads to lesser friction than maybe in others.
But the fact is, I don't know whether his sister wanted to come into the business or not. Sometimes it's conditioning, that you just are conditioned to not want it. But the next generation, they may grow up different, and they may want it. And so how do you start preparing them equally? Because there is, in India, I'm not talking about their family, there is a certain degree of chauvinism, that this is how the son is going to be trained and treated, and this is how the daughter is going to be trained and treated, So what happens later on, in different families, I'm now noticing this in the next generation, where there are a lot of women who want to actually get into the family business, and some males who don't want to get into the family business. It's both ways, and it's now creating a new lexicon really of the next generation.
I think things are changing, perhaps as in professional sphere as well as in family businesses, where there is more of that equality which is on the right path. I think the challenge really is, we've heard one example where there's a clear demarcation. What about when there isn't? When there is a patriarch who isn't willing to really let go? And that really is some of the challenges which you may have seen, Mr. Sinha, when you're consulting family businesses. That I may not always be right just because I started the company.
Yeah, but as long as the patriarch is there, decision spaces are less, because they started the company, and so they really don't need your approval on whether you agree or disagree with them. When it goes from second to third and third to fourth, and there is a family which has a 4A, 4B, 4B5, that then becomes much more complicated. When it's the patriarch, actually the complexity is much less, because the patriarch has started the business against all odds.
No, but then what would be the advice to a generation that wants to hand over the baton, where you are going to have to give space as well?
I can share with you one example. I met with a patriarch of a large Indian business group, and he told me that, do you do pipe cleaning? So I said, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. So he said, no, we have many relationships in the family, husband, wife, father, son, daughter, mother-in-law, and daughter-in-law, mother-in-law. Now, you have various pipes of conversation between the two. Those pipes get dirty over time because of unsaid issues, challenges that arise. So we clean our pipes every 6 months.
Oh dear.
So we have a person who comes in who makes us thrash out any differences that there are. And at the end of that, it's a trained person who will facilitate a discussion and across all relationships, so that every 6 months we know where we stand and all issues are thrashed out. And I think while that's very advanced, we don't do that, but I'd just say that a lot of challenges very often arise when it comes to personal issues, unsaid things, low communication. But I think this was something which was quite wise, which is a very unique story that I heard from this patriarch.
I feel that the other point that Anant made is really deeply important. There are soft issues of rights and wrongs, which cause people to feel hurt. You need to know where people are hurting and find out ways to do things which are helpful. Don't get into right and wrong, get into helpful and unhelpful. To settle the hurts that may start to simmer. That's the soft issue which is important.
Absolutely.
I have another question in terms of what direction to take and whether there is a thought or not, and not of course specific to your case, but you may have insight on this. When you come in as next generation into a very storied family business which has been stable, has been doing very well, do you look at diversifying, preserving, do more of the same? You just want to first of all keep the ship steady? Or do you say that, okay, I right now have these kind of resources at my disposal. I can do what a lot of people cannot do. I have that opportunity. In what way should you be thinking?
I think growth is absolutely very important. So you not only want to preserve, preservation is important, but you want to grow. And you want to grow faster than the industry. You want to grow the best as any other company would want to grow. So I think that is absolutely important. Now the methodology for growth would vary, because if you're in industries which may be old world, which may be seeing a certain level of negative growth or flat growth, you may want to move to new industries. So we spend a lot of time on looking at what are the future S-curves within our core businesses and investing in those areas for future growth. For example, in KEC, we were primarily into power transmission and distribution. Over time, we've diversified into multiple new areas of project management, such as renewable energy and so on. In tires, we've invested in a home delivery of tire company. As consumers are buying online, you can have the ease of getting your tires delivered at home, and so on and so forth. In our pharmaceutical business, we've invested and looking at growing further in API segment. So it's not necessarily a completely unrelated acquisition, but high growth in your current businesses. And if you have the capital and have that passion, of course, why not even look at unrelated spaces of growth?
So in the sense, is that pressure sometimes there that you don't want to be another notch in the family tree, right? I mean, these businesses come and the hope of everyone is they last 100 years,
right,
or 90, 100, 150 years. You want to go down in the history books as someone who took it further in a significant way. Is that thought somewhere there at the back of the mind?
No, I think absolutely. You want to grow the businesses. I don't know whether it's how you want to be thought of back. It's not only about money and growth, but how you're impacting your customers, how you're conducting your own self at work. Are you treating your people with compassion as you take decisions as well? So all of those things matter. Just
as we wrap the show, final thoughts on this. What do you think is the one best thing? I'm simplifying it, but just for our viewers, one biggest advantage and one biggest disadvantage of being in the position that you are as the next generation of a legacy business?
I think the biggest advantage is long-term thinking. We are not looking quarter to quarter to quarter. I know that we will, whatever I do, I'm today 43. I've been the CEO of a company for 10 years, who at the age of 40 may have the privilege of saying, you've been there for 10 years. And I have maybe another 20 years plus to go as in terms of the visibility and future. So that's the kind of longer term thinking that would come in. When it comes to areas of improvement or a negative, sometimes the perception of family businesses from the outside can be one where it lacks professionalism. But I think things are changing out there as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Sinha, Mr. Goenka, for joining us today. This has truly been a special episode, and thank you to all of you for joining us on this episode of Building Legacy. A lot more to come. Stay tuned to this space.